Hello, everyone. Welcome to Phonogenics 101. We are here to talk about Joni Mitchell's double album, Don Juan's Reckless Daughter. And probably since we have so many people on the panel, if everyone can mute when they're not talking, they'll clean up the sound a little bit. And Les is joining us. First of all, thanks to my Patreon subscribers for holding me accountable. Because, you know, when I want to cancel and go out and go on a date and stuff, I said, nope, I gotta do the podcast. Can't let down my Patreon subscribers. And then if you're watching this, hit subscribe on the YouTube channel and, you know, let's spread the word. So last month, we talked about, as I pronounce it, Hajira, which is not how the rest of the group pronounces it. That turned into a two-parter. Tonight, we're tackling a double album from 1977 called Don Juan's Reckless Daughter. I have the CD. And I have the songbook that has some kind of cool pictures in it. So,
and the t-shirt.
Oh, yeah, the t-shirt is so cool. So, I guess let's go around the panel and have everybody introduce themselves and just say a little bit. Let's try something fun and just say one line that you feel about this album. We're going to start with you, Bob.
Okay, Bob Mueller, and this album, I would say, is mystical and experimental.
All right. Next, we have Sue. Oh, you're on mute, friend.
I'm Sue Tierney, and you want me to say one line about the album or a line from one of her songs?
That's cool, baby.
Either one.
I got kind of a glow.
Uh-oh. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I don't want for much.
Hello? Can you
Hey.
hear me?
Yep. Can you hear us?
Okay. Yeah, there was something weird going on there for a second.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, and Don Juan's Reckless Daughter is an amazing album, and I love the song Don Juan's Reckless Daughter. It is just so incredible and dense, and you know, and there's a lot of really great stuff. Bob was right about it being experimental. So.
Yeah. Don Juan's Reckless Daughter is also one of my favorite Joni songs of all time. So I'd imagine there's going to be a considerable chunk of time talking about that song. All right, pause.
Good evening, everybody. Michael Paz. Nice to see everybody. I think this is one of her most percussive and rhythmic albums.
Okay. All right, Chris. I guess I should wait till he has his headphones on. Chris, I'm putting you on the spot.
Hi. Yeah. I was still in college when it came out, and I was living off campus for the first time. So it was kind of like I was surviving on Doritos and Fudgesicles. Those were the two food groups that I concentrated on. And Miller beer, of course. Friend of mine who we lived with had this kick-ass stereo, and we had these Bose speakers with these really long throw woofers, and man, did they come in handy for this record, because this record has bottom end and just crazy, I'm going to say it out loud, balls out playing by the entire band involved. It is just so, it gives it 150%. There's nothing held back, I think, in this. And I was so happy to experience it when I did. I was so happy to read that sort of the same thoughts that I had were also found by other people. I think it was fairly well received and well thought of, you know, perhaps because it carried so many of Weather Report onto it with it, you know, and it did get Charles Mingus' attention, but that was later on. When we get to, there's one particular song I think you all know that I am extremely attached to, and I have spent decades of my life trying to sort of understand and reproduce all sorts of aspects of it. And I do love Paprika Plains, and right now it's lonely here. I wish I knew of anybody else on the earth who can play the whole thing. the way I can, or that I can, that can play the whole thing. To my understanding, not even Joni Mitchell can play the whole thing. So please, if you're out there, contact me.
That's your soulmate. Oh, okay. David.
Hi, I'm David, David Phillips, and I guess my one line is the spirit talks in spectrums, talks from Mother Earth to Father Sky, self-indulgence to self-denial, man to woman, scales to feathers. So that's I love this album.
Aw.
Like, duh. I mean, like each of the past albums, I love this one too.
It's been quite the string of albums, hasn't it? I was laying in bed thinking about it. Okay. Ruben.
Okay, I'm Ruben Bell. My line from this album would be, if you've got a place like that to go, you just have to go there. And I love this record. I heard this for the first time in the late 80s when I was kind of going through the back catalog, and it was one of the last ones I heard before the new ones started coming out after that. And I just fell in love with it immediately. I love, she sings, to me, it feels like she sings a little more aggressively on some of this than she did in the past. And it's just so dense and rhythmic. And I think it's one of her absolute best.
All right. Next, we have Dave and Robin.
I'm Dave Blackburn, and this is Robin Adler. And between us, we have a band called Mutts of the Planet, which specializes in playing Joni's music. And we've been doing that for the last 15 years. Did you want to say something, hon? No, you can. For me, if I'm sticking to one sentence, this is the album where she embraced or even discovered ethnic music. And we know that she liked Motown and jazz, Miles Davis, Marvin Gaye, and so on prior to that. But that's pop and jazz. On this album, she actually went further back and found the roots of African drumming, and that's huge for a girl from Saskatchewan or Canada to discover and then actually feature on her record some of the great exponents of that music. So I'll say more about that later.
Awesome. All right, Mark.
I'm Mark Scott. I think this album is a fascinating collage that she put together around Paprika Plains, and it has flashes of brilliance to it, and I think it holds up very well, and I really love it.
All right, Jamie.
Hello, I'm Jamie Zubairi, and my one line from this album, is that it is her most expansive experimentally, and sonically there's so many different world musics in this album, and I love it, and as well as classical and folk, and she does the whole gamut of kind of like, this is me, as it were.
All right, and last but not least, we have Les.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
I just want to say that about halfway through this, I'm going to have to leave so I can piss a tequila anaconda the full length of my parking lot. So. That's all I need. That's all I want to tell you.
Perfect.
Robin, did you have something to say?
Not right now.
Okay.
Later.
All right, so
the spokesperson.
So I bought Chalk Mark in a rainstorm at a flea market, and then I became obsessed with Joni Mitchell.
Should we listen to Mark?
Yeah.
Did we pass over Mark?
No, I did.
Nope, he talked.
So I found Don Juan's Reckless Daughter in the cutout bin for like $3.99. There it is. There's the album cover. And it's always interesting, like your first impressions of an album versus how they eventually live with you once you really get to know them. So the first time I heard this album, it just sounded kind of thin to me. It seemed like the lyrics weren't up to the level of like Hajira and some of the other stuff. And, you know, but I still listened to it over and over, and then eventually it became one of my favorite Joni Mitchell albums. So, you know, when we go song by song, we'll talk about that journey. But I guess before we talk about the songs, I believe that there's an album cover that needs to be discussed. So, Chris, you want to hold up the cover again? We have Joni here in blackface. That's her alter ego, Art Nouveau, correct? Was that her name?
Yep.
Then we have Joni with a
And
naked...
also another Art Nouveau inside.
Yeah, there's art. There's a naked female in the collage, right? Some balloons. I guess a young boy.
Yeah, the young boy, as I understand, was just a son of someone who was in the studio at the time that joined the photo shoot. Every other photo was of Joni, either as a young girl or, you know, an older woman, and then the blackface Art Nouveau character.
Doesn't she have an Indian headdress on is it the back cover or one of the inner?
Right, and she's saying how.
How? Yeah. There.
So she gets extra racism in there.
So before the podcast,
in the actual dust sleeves, and one of the dust sleeves it says in my doings we fly.
Right.
It has a picture like walking backwards with some balloons, right?
Yeah.
Also, there's another picture of
Muslims.
Muslim.
Yeah, Muslim. Yeah.
Which is like,
Baila mi rumba.
let's get all the racism in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
By the way, you could buy that dress on eBay at some point. This dress showed up on eBay.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
The naked woman is not Joni. Though.
Oh, it's not?
No.
Somebody found the print or whatever or it was a postcard or something. Somebody found that picture.
It wasn't
I'm looking for that now.
It wasn't a For the Roses by the Lake naked outtake.
No.
I'm actually surprised that Disney didn't come after her with the mouse, you know, with
They
the
did.
balloons. They did. Oh, more on that.
Yep.
So I don't even know where to start with this album cover. So let's kind of, much like this album, let's just do a free for all right now. Whoever wants to jump in, say what you think, because there's so much to unpack here. There's so much that will be questionable when the reissue comes out. Sue, I saw your hand up. Let's start with Sue.
Yeah, I just wanted to read. So I, of course, listened to Don Juan's Reckless Daughter today in my car, and I have Apple Music. And I noticed that there was a disclaimer on the album, which says, Joni Mitchell appeared on the cover of Don Juan's Reckless Daughter disguised as a black man. An oblique and no doubt offensive, regardless of intentions, comment, perhaps about the shape-shifting nature of this album's music.
Heartless bitch.
So all I want to say about the cover and about her, you know, blackface is that since I'm a white woman, I feel like the only thing I can say is my experience with my father. My father graduated from East Orange High School in 1957 as a minority white person. I think him and, you know, and my mother graduated the same year. They were maybe like 10% white people in this, and he was really good friends with a lot of black guys. They played basketball all the time, and he actually wanted to be a black man. He wanted to be like he would tell us all the time, I want to be Wilson Pickett. He wanted to be cool, and he loved Motown, and he loved Motown music, and he would dress, you know, like, you know, especially in the early 70s with the Kiana shirts and all the chains and everything, you know. And he, the other thing he would say to us all the time is, when I grow up, I want to be a Pip.
Oh.
You know? So, you know, it's like, he was kind of comical. I mean, he kind of acted like a jerk, you know, and didn't really have the black experience. I mean, as soon as he moved out of East Orange, he got a big job at the FAA. and, you know, moved up the ladder. So he didn't have any of the experience of, you know, discrimination or anything. But he would, if he wanted to, I bet you he would try to do blackface and
Wow.
try to be Wilson Pickett, because that's what his attitude was. He wanted to be a black man. And in a way, during that time, you know, with the way Motown and, you know, people like Stevie Wonder and all the black music, and actually my father was also a huge Michael Jackson fan. He listened to Michael Jackson like into the 80s, and so I don't know what to say about that other than I'm just talking from my own experience. I think it's kind of rude and a bit and racist to think that you can co-opt that and it's okay. You know what I mean? And it's, you know, I don't know, you know, it's interesting because Joni's getting so many accolades this year, and you know, there were a couple articles that came out during, I guess, the Black Lives Matter era, and I read one last week. I should send it to you guys, where it's very offensive to some people, you know, to black people, and you know, she wants to be part of this. She said many times, I feel like I'm a black person, you know, I want, and you know, she kind of felt like that she was part of that because she was a woman in a very male oriented, you know, music industry. So I guess she felt, you know, like she could relate to their discrimination. I don't know, but you know, she did pretty good. You know what I mean?
Right.
I mean, you know, there were a lot of people who, you know, tried their whole life and were really great musicians, and they got ripped off, and they did not have the same experiences as, you know, white musicians. Bottom line.
I recently watched the documentary about Betty Davis, the singer from the 70s.
Yeah.
It's, you know, you put her experience next to Joni Mitchell's.
Yeah. I mean, it's there's no comparison. So she was being goofy, you know, and it hurt a lot of people's feelings, and you know, it's too bad.
Well, just to put a little bit of context to it, I believe she came up with the idea of this when she was walking down the street, and there was a black man following her and was really wolf whistling and telling her how fine she was, and she got a big kick out of this and decided she was going to use this person as the basis for a Halloween costume to go to a Halloween party. And she put on the blackface, she put on the costume, she went to this Halloween party, and at first nobody knew who the hell she was. And that's kind of where it all started. But she has said that she identified or somehow felt that there was this black man inside of her. In fact, she said that if she ever wrote her autobiography, she would start it with, "I was the only black man in the room."
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So
I don't find it offensive at all, what she did at the time. You know, it was a different era then, and I consider her an artist, and I think, you know, certainly an intellectual and someone who's brilliant enough to know that, you know, right from wrong, and I don't think she did it in any sort of mean spirit or anything like that. Growing up in Detroit on the lower, you know, the west side, which was mixed between black and white and Mexican, and it was a rough neighborhood, you know, and I came up in that environment, and I really didn't know, you know, my best friend was a black kid named Michael Jackson, and you know, I didn't know any of those things at that time. It was just a different era. Two years later, in 1967, when the Detroit riots happened, you know, it's very hard for me to comprehend it at 12 years old what the heck was going on with these race riots. And my grandmother's house was 4 doors down from the Algiers Motel where they got H. Rap Brown. But now that I live in the area in New Orleans, I mean, I'm amongst people in blackface all the time. During carnival season here, even black people dress up in blackface in celebration of our carnival. And so it has its place, and I think what's happened in recent history is unfortunate, and it's certainly sad. And I'm not saying, certainly we're having these discussions about the statues and all the rebel figures that are coming down around us. Um, I think all of that is appropriate, but certainly I'm not going after authors or composers or something, especially somebody like Joni Mitchell. That, like I said, I think it was a completely. I don't think she did it with any kind of ill intent. So whether she's misunderstood or understood or not, that's another story, by whoever's interpreting.
Well, she's not running for political office, and if she was, boy.
Yeah.
I definitely think with all things artistic like this, it's really about intention. Like, what's someone's intention when they do something? And like everyone said, I don't think there was any malice, and I don't even think she probably understood where culture would go and how that would be interpreted 20 or 30 years later. Bob.
Right.
I think Chris had his hand up before me.
Oh, okay. Chris, then Bob.
I just wanted to say exactly what you just said, which was there was no malice intended. I think that it's very true, though, that an artist, even one protecting the rights of an artist for expression, needs to understand that, and I'm sure she does, that sometimes the edginess of the art can inflame passions and hurt and bring up hurt that she really does not completely understand, because
Right.
she can't.
But by the same token, she's also shining a light on a race that's totally misunderstood and underappreciated
and
everything
absolutely,
else.
absolutely, there are probably so many good reasons why her using her celebrity and position to be able to find a way to contextualize what she could of that experience is today, decades later, looked at as clumsy and tone deaf and that kind of thing. And you know what, you've got to be able to say, look, please understand, this is artistic expression. It does not mean there was no intent of malice behind it. And that just serves reminding. That's all. Sorry, Bob.
That's okay. I mean, all I want to add is pretty much the same comment. It's all about intention. Here in South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, you've got fraternity houses that have parties where all the white guys put on blackface and they mock black culture. They're still obviously very much racist, as we know. That's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Whereas, the cover of Don Juan's Reckless Daughter might make me cringe a little bit when I realize the intention and the artistic expression. I don't have a problem with it as I do, the aforementioned offenses.
All right. I saw Dave Blackburn, then Mark, then Jamie, then Les, I believe.
I just read recently, I think it was Leland Sklar whose party it was. He and his wife were having a Halloween party, and he retells the story of seeing this character just sort of loitering, and nobody knew who he was with, or eventually that it was ta-da. So I think it was very fun and successful as a Halloween costume. I think as an album cover, it's dreadful, and it undermines. Even apart from the squeamishness of it, I think because it's kind of a jape, it undermines the artistry that's contained in the record. I mean, if you think about all the album covers up to this point that she'd done, they were either self-portraits or they were paintings of scenes from the work, Hissing of Summer Lawns, for example. And this really has nothing to do with the music. I think this was just it worked as a laugh on Halloween, so she figured, well, it'll work as a laugh for an album cover, and I'll just kind of put something together. I think that was a poor decision because it doesn't illuminate the album, and 40, 50 years later, it actually undermines the album.
All right, Mark.
One thing that just occurred to me, actually, Charles Mingus famously commented on the strings on Paprika Plain, so he must have seen that album cover, I would think, at some point. And if there's anybody that would have been offended by it, you would think it would have been him, because he was pretty radical about all of that. Something else just came into my mind, but it went out again. So I'll pass it on to whoever is up next.
I think Jamie was next.
Hate it when that happens.
I think we mentioned it before, and Ruben mentioned it before we started recording, that, you know, who knows what will happen with the reissue, with the remaster, when that eventually comes out. Will it have the same image? And just before we started recording, we all mentioned that actually the whole album cover is dripping with racist tropes. We've got her dressed as a Native American, as a child, with the speech bubble that says "how." The
Muslims.
Yep, Art Nouveau says Muslims in a kind of, I mean, the way she spells it is kind of, icky. There's the obvious blackface, and then the Baila Mi Rumba, which is kind of like, let's get every trope in of racist and racism.
It's a pretty thick statement.
So yeah, it's kind of like, this is how easy it is for a white person to be racist and be okay with it, and it not come back at them.
Sure.
And that this is the industry which, you know, would rarely put a black man on the cover. So here's a white woman, and I'd missed the whole cover. I mean, I had the album, I had the LP first, and I missed it. I didn't see it until I read it in a magazine in the late 80s, and I went, really? So it took me a while, and you know, the whole like, I was the only black man at the party, I think stuck with her, because at the time I think she was seeing Don Elias, and I don't think he was at the party. I don't think even he was at the party. So it's really kind of, and I can't really defend it now, because it's, anyone else doing it would be racist, or the intention behind it would be racist, but the artistic intention, which she did, I'm still trying to figure it out. Apart from having to, you know, hold up these racist tropes and kind of go, this is okay with us, except it isn't. You know,
or maybe it's like All in the Family, and she's showing how ridiculous and stupid it all is. I don't know.
Possibly.
All right, Les, did you have something? Oh, sorry, Jamie.
I'm speaking as a person of color. Do you know what I mean? So I'm kind of like, when I read the Muslims as a Muslim, I'm like, that's interesting. You know, but it's like, you know, it's a pot shot at everything. So I'm kind of like, it's not. She's making a point. I'm still not sure what that point is, but she's making a point.
When I was growing up and all through times of, say, like high school, especially, I went to high school in North Carolina and finished here in Louisiana. So I was around a lot of Southern racists who used all sorts of profane things to say, you know, every slang thing that you can say. My favorite thing to say was, in the old days, was, I feel like I could hang in any neighborhood except white neighborhoods, some white neighborhoods, because certainly I was embraced by many, many people because of my skin color, because of my heritage, because I was different. And then on the other hand, I was treated poorly by other people that thought, oh, he's Italian, or he's Greek, or he's Spanish, or he's black, or whatever. And so to me, it's a badge of honor to be with all those other races and, you know, the people that don't like it. And it's, you know, I guess it has made me sort of, prejudiced against certain, certain white people. And when I see that kind of thing going on, certainly I have to admit to that hatred and bad juju coming up. So I just wonder if, if that was something that she was trying to shine a light on, that all of these things, especially if she included everybody, that she did, if that was the intention for it, to shine a light on it, to make it, okay to love people of color like us, Jamie.
All right.
Well,
Let's
let's
just-
not forget she reprises Don Nouveau in a big way in her little short film called Black Cat and the Black Mouse Socks, which is a really, really bad piece of filmmaking that was a part of this movie Project Love that Liv Ullmann put together in around the time she did Wild Things Run Fast.
Oh.
And then she also did blackface again in the Beat a Black Wings video, if you'll recall.
Oh, that's right. All right. Les, did you have something to add? No? Okay. So I think we have Ruben and then David and then Chris.
I'm just curious how, like, I came across this album 10 years later, maybe 11 years later, after it was released. What was there any kind of a reaction to it at the time? And what did her peers think about it? I mean, Shaka Khan played on this. Lots of people of color played on this record. What did they think? Has anybody ever said anything about it? I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know.
Nope.
No, and the list of artists of color she worked with grew from that point on too. I mean, it contracted a little bit in the in the Klein era in the 80s, but she worked with a lot of folks who had plenty of opportunity to have reacted to this cover if they chose to interpret it as tone deaf or otherwise insensitive.
Yeah, I will say that I don't think I've ever seen anything really negative in the press or written anywhere about this cover, surprisingly. David?
There have been a few things in the last year or so.
Recently, yeah.
I just want to say that in addition to the cover, I mean, the racist tropes permeate the album, permeate the music, from the poor boys hustling and sizing you up on Cotton Avenue, and the black babies covered in baking flour, and the Muslims sticking up Washington. And I'm really ambivalent, to say the least. But why a pimp? I actually kind of enjoy the racist tropes of Dreamland. I like the Cook with the Carnival Song and the Black Babies Covered in Baking Flour, and because it seems to reference colonialism and seems actually to have a political context there. But the black pimp at the no, I just no. And and the drunken Indians. But also, I want to say she has in fact been embraced by Indian tribes and by black musicians. So I don't know. It's definitely it's problematic.
Do we need to find ironized Cody and bring him over?
The fact that we're even talking about this could simply be white guilt.
Okay.
that we're even considering this as as relevant. You know what I mean? This is not to say that we should not hope that Joni is at least aware that people are out there who might be upset to this day, or as they discover it anew, that it existed or was served up as popular art. But at the same time, the fact that we're discussing this may just be what we are bringing to the table from decades of living with it and wondering if it was right.
I do hope that Joni realizes that, culture has evolved and the temperature is different now. So the context is much different now, and that has to be acknowledged. Dave Blackburn.
Just following on from Chris's point, Joni and Chaka Khan are best friends. They're neighbors and have been best friends for a long time. I've got the feeling that that her black friends weren't offended by this as much as the today's sensitive culture, more sensitive cultural antenna. I think there's more offense being taken now because that discussion has led to white guilt about such things. I think it was maybe taken in good humor by her friends who were, as you say, she was with Don Elias at least that year, maybe not when the record was being made. She's been friends with Chaka Khan, she's friends with Herbie Hancock, Wayne Shorter, on, and it would be hard to believe that those people would have been sorely offended by that stunt and then become friends with her.
And I think Joni would be.
Also, if Janet Jackson had seen the video of Be the Black Wings and was offended by it, I don't think she would have covered that song either.
Well, her brother was going for white skin.
Oh no. Les, we're going to add something?
I think Joni would be offended that people think that's offensive, I mean, I think she did it to honor the music she loved, and just looking back on it now 40 years later, we have a different lens on it, but I think at the time it was a sign of respect.
Right.
Oh, the intention is definitely there, Les, that she was, I think trying to show that type of respect and to illuminate the inequity of the entire situation. I think that she wanted to do that. But this is not to say that she can in perpetuity be tone deaf to the people who will discover this and apply a context based on where we are now.
I think the needle always goes, far this way than before it settles in the middle. So, Les, we're going to add some more.
As you know, Rhino is going through these series of 50-year anniversaries with all these albums. And I think when the 50-year anniversary comes up for Don Juan, I think there's going to have to be some serious discussion with Joni about how they're going to present it, because when that gets unleashed again in a boxed set or something, it's going to be a different story. I think.
On top of that, it'll be like, years from now. So who knows where our political climate will be by that point too.
Sure.
Not only that though, I think Whoopi Goldberg, as of all people, said it best when she was talking about older cartoons, and she was giving like an intro to an old cartoon that had like some serious racist issues. And she said, it's a product of the time. Now, whether or not like it's right, we can discuss, right? But we can't pretend it didn't happen. Mm. And so it's the same idea, I think, with that. Like, it is great to discuss what her mentality was behind it. And I believe it, like Les said, it was more of an honoring. And what kind of awesome discussions will that bring? As opposed to being kind of, a mammy kind of, or minstrelsy, you know what I mean? Like parody. It's not. I mean, Joni's not doing that, Do I agree with Dave where it's like, ooh, pimp, but at the same time, it's just, I think, like Les said, it's just more of she thought, she was a flashy black man and she was going to act like one, And I also kind of made the joke too, like, she certainly, had her vices, and I think that probably made it seem a little less big deal at the time, because like that quote Rick James says, right? Cocaine's a hell of a drug. So
she's, not that I want to, Shanghai the conversation, for lack of a better word, Shanghai the conversation. But with regard to pimping and that sort of thing, she has drawn that analogy to her position within the recording industry for quite often. So that in its own way might have been associated in this.
Well, I had a thought about the picture of Joni as a child with the feathers and the drum and all of that. I mean, this was a picture of her, as I said, when she was, I don't know, 3 feet tall, probably from the late 1940s, maybe early 50s. And she was a kid. And she probably would have been saying, how, while she was beating on this drum. So, I don't know. To me, that's a little bit more innocent. That's like, this is me when I was a child. This is what I would have said. This is how I would have acted. I don't know.
Remember, she always wanted to be Roy Rogers instead of Dale Evans as well, you know, so.
She had to be a German.
She wanted to cross-dress.
Taking the photographs aside, I did love, because Hissing kind of had the silver tint and the dark green grass, then Hejira, you know, the very wintry landscape. And I did, taking the pictures out of it, I loved the orange and the blue, the more kind of desert feel, because it does feel like the album to me. So that aesthetic I really enjoyed.
That's the paprika under the blue sky.
Yeah.
But you know, there was a painting that she did called Axler Moonrise or something like that, which has a lot of references, I think, to Don Juan in it. And I wish she would have used that for the cover.
Wasn't there a painting called Don Juan's Reckless Daughter in the one book, the West Coast Musicians book?
I think it's the same painting.
Yeah, I have that over there. Somebody's hand was up and I missed it. Ruben.
I just wanted to mention, I'm pretty sure that this was the only of the albums in the Reprise box set that the artwork wasn't really faithfully reproduced on those little CD booklets too. Even the Mingus original LP that had the additional pages in it, those were included in the Mingus CD reissue in that box set, but the Don Juan's slip covers were not. The only place Art Nouveau appears on that reissued CD and that box set is on the cover. So somebody obviously pulled them out because they clearly paid a little bit of attention to those album covers and in the interiors too.
When did that come out? A few years
It's
ago,
probably
right?
been six years ago, maybe.
Right.
Fairly recently.
That first Rhino box set is you talking about?
Was that the album with all the box set with all the albums in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pre Geffen.
All right. Well, do we have any other thoughts on the album cover? What do y'all think of the album title, Don Juan's Reckless Daughter? I love it. All right. Well, the album opens with an overture, which, listening on the headphones, I just had a blast listening to that. How many guitars did she layer in there?
6.
6 guitars? 2? And then Jaco Pastorius just sachets right in with that low bass note. What do y'all think of overture?
It was great. So when I first heard this record, it was when it came out in December 1977. WQDR in Raleigh was the station I listened to all the time. They had a disc jockey who I've referenced before, Joe Lee. She was a big Joni Mitchell fan. The album was not going to be released till Friday, but she spun this on a Tuesday night, and I had my headphones on in the bed, had the cassette player rolling, and when this overture came on, it was like I felt like I was floating in the clouds, not looking above or below like both sides now, but literally floating in the clouds. It's like, what is going on here? And I just thought it was beautiful. And of course, when it segues into Cotton Avenue, I just said, wow, here we are. This is great. What a great start.
Well, I, for years, thought it was just her and Jaco jamming, which I'm sure it was, but I was totally ignorant about how these records were made. And now, and particularly in the last few times that we've done this, I thought about it and I thought, boy, this was some more of her. I assume, Dave, you would probably know this better than me, but some more of her editing, that she took bits and pieces and put it together for this thing.
No doubt, yeah. Personally, I think there's two guitars. I hear two distinct sounds, but it's a very nice piece of sound design, and I can't really think of anything that she did prior to this that you could call sound design. Everything was a song. And so this is kind of groundbreaking for her in as much as she's opening the album sort of cinematically with no vocals, and the vocals enter 5 minutes later or something, and
maybe a little bit in Sweetbird. Maybe that might have come close,
yeah,
but very
I mean, of course
different
there are
feeling.
vocals, there are ooh vocals, but there's no obvious Joni Mitchell sound for a few minutes.
Dave, do you think she's playing the Klein, the big body Klein in this?
Well, Klein had started building that guitar in '77, but it took him 4 years to build. So I don't think he delivered that until '81. No, this would have probably been one of her D28s.
It sounds different though.
Yeah, it's very spiky sounding, but that could have been EQ or the mic they chose. It's very bright, lots of missing bottom end.
I noticed on the remaster that, I mean, I listened to the remaster today. I listened to the other one last week, but I listened to the remaster today, and I just really heard so many things that I hadn't heard before, and the sounds of the guitars were something that really struck me.
Yeah, I definitely have opinions about how it was originally mastered and mixed, but one of the things actually had to do with level. I mean, the album starts so quietly that you would be turning it up and up and up and up just to kind of hear what she's doing, and then wham, the bass comes in, and you have to turn it down. Well, that's bad mastering. Yeah, you can go for dynamic contour, but if the whole point of good mastering is that you aren't constantly adjusting your listening level. So I think that, and also in the analog era, you invited a lot of tape hiss by having low record levels. So that's one of the problems with that too, was the noise it induced. But I do love the reverb, and I love the kind of harmonic abandon going on in there. One of the guitars is in Night Ride Home tuning. I'm not sure what the other one is, but she found some chords that dovetailed well with each other, and it was put into this very wet, echoey space that makes it very much feel like sound design.
Has anybody on this podcast learned and performed Overture?
I've learned some of it. I learned one of the guitar parts.
Oh, cool.
A few years ago.
All right, so you need to learn the other one.
No covers of that, right, Bob?
Yeah, there is. We can get to that at the end of the discussion, or I can talk about it now.
Talk about it.
So, yeah, there was two covers. Well, one cover was just of Cotton Avenue. That was in 2002 by the Steve Klink Trio out of Germany. That was a CD they put out called Places to Come From, Places to Go, all Joni Mitchell songs, the first time that Cotton Avenue was covered. Now, last year, 2020, a group called Working Week put out Overture / Cotton Avenue, the entire thing. And it's really, really pretty. You can go to YouTube and listen to it. It's a really great job. It's just amazing. It blew me away when I heard it.
Really?
Yeah.
How do they handle Jocko's parts?
I haven't listened to him in a while, but not like Jocko. I can tell that. And while we're talking about Jocko, as I said on the Facebook page today, 34 years ago was when he died.
Oh,
September 21st.
Down in Fort Lauderdale, right?
Yeah.
That cover by Working Week was one of those wonderful gems that you found and shared with us too, Bob. I don't think I ever would have come across that. And that was sung by, I can't remember what her name is on the album, but she used to be named Julie Driscoll, who covered Dylan's "This Wheel on Fire," which ended up being the opening theme song for the Absolutely Fabulous show years ago. It was just this weird connection on that. And I thought she did a great job with this.
Yeah, no, she did. And I would say, Ruben, if you like that song, go to Amazon and check out that whole record. And it's all on YouTube too.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, the songs, her track selection, just amazing. I mean, she goes deep, 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 and I just love it.
All right. Do we have any other thoughts on the overture here before we move on to Macon, Georgia?
I do love how Jaco, when he first enters, he's got his bottom string tuned down to a C. So you get this real grumbly, note. And as Chris said, if you listen to this on a system with some bass, it's dramatic because the guitars have no bass. And all of a sudden there's this whole extra octave that appears below them.
Yeah, and on Hejura, if I'm not mistaken, all of Jaco's parts were added after the tracks had been recorded.
Mm-hmm.
On this record, he was in full partnership with Joni and with John Guerin, the three of them, playing their parts on pretty much every song.
And Steve Katz told me that Jaco was at all the sessions, even when he wasn't playing. He was involved with, the mixes and overdubs, and whenever he wasn't on tour, he was in the studio with her. So I think he had a tendency to want to take over anyway, and Joni just kind of let him do it because he's Jaco Pastorius. What are you going to do?
Do you think when people weren't looking, he was pushing up the fader on the bass part, just inching it up a little bit?
Yeah. Well, Steve Katz did most of the mix on this album because one thing I learned from him was that Henry Louis had terrible back pain. And so during the making of this album, he was lying down on the couch.
Ooh.
He was listening, but he was lying down on the couch just to, alleviate the back pain. So Steve did most of the mixing on this record.
All right. Any other thoughts to throw in about our overture here before we move on to the first proper song? All right. So Cotton Avenue is a district in Macon, Georgia, correct?
Correct.
Which I drive to Atlanta a lot, and there's this rest stop where I always pull my car over and sleep and make it. Like, that's my spot. I have my parking spot. I have a Honda Fit, so I just put it on the back and sleep there. And I never knew till last week that Cotton Avenue was right there. I would have totally gone. So now I have to drive all the way up there just to hang out. I mean, it's like probably like 5 hours for me. Totally.
Make sure to take your dancing shoes.
Yeah, take my dancing shoes.
You just have to go there.
So the first time I heard Cotton Avenue, I'll admit that I was a little bit underwhelmed because I just thought the chorus, like, if you have a place to go, you got to go there. If you've got no place special, you go no place special. So I'm like, I don't know about this, but I've grown to love it.
Yeah, I love it.
I thought the first time I heard it, it sounded kind of like just a generic bar band shuffle. I don't think that anymore. Like, I love this song, but I was just underwhelmed on first listen, and it was a grower for me. So everyone else jump in. What's your feelings on Sue?
Well, I just wanted to say when Dave was talking about the guitars that there's 3 songs in the same tuning on this album. It's Cotton Avenue, Off Night Backstreet, and Silky Veils of Ardor are all in the C, C, F, G, C tuning. And I mean, the guitars sound amazing. I mean, even when I was listening to Jericho today, the way that she's strumming them and and getting that full sound and it just sounds so amazing. So Cotton Avenue has that great guitar sound in there too, and it kind of fades in the background too sometimes when all the other music is going, but you can still feel it as kind of an underpinning of the songs. Dave, you want to say something?
Yeah, I to my ear, Cotton Avenue is not in that tuning.
Well, you might be right.
I have no doubt that it can be played in that tuning, but when she plays, that 12th fret 1-finger chord, that's a very clear indicator of what the tuning is. And to me, it's the Night Ride Home, CGD.
Oh, it might be.
EGC, And I keep one of my baritone guitars tuned always in that tuning, and I learned Cotton Avenue, and it's all her familiar shapes,
Mhm.
you know. So I think that's what the tuning is.
Well, to tell you the truth, I haven't played that song that much, and I think Marion may have tabbed that one. So I'll have to check it out and see which I agree with. But I mean, we'll see.
Not
But
that
yeah,
it
there's
matters either way. If you can play it, you can play it. But
I think this song introduces a whole sort of menu of what we're going to hear for the rest of the record in terms of the guitar sound. It's really, I don't know, Dave, maybe you know, it seems like it's really right up into the mic, that it's up forward, and it's very confident and almost like a solo voice of itself, where before she used it more as sort of like, you know, background support. This is like, it's a character here in a way that I don't recall it ever having been before.
yeah, and also her technique by this point had fully grown into the bass slap brush or bass brush slap thing that she did for the rest of her career. So on the early records, she had this very intricate kind of finger style technique going on that was beautiful. But she was going for a much more percussive thing by now, and you really hear that. I think she's using a pick a lot on Cotton Avenue, but because that's partly why it's so brash, because she's really whacking it hard. But something like Otis and Marlena, you know, that's a finger style playing in her kind of later style.
and the bass is pretty low in that. The bass strings are pretty low in that song too.
Yeah, they're tuned down, but they're not warm sounding, which makes me think that either they EQ'd them that way so that there'd be more room for bass guitar, or the mic was just positioned like that, because it's very hard not to get low end when you've got low notes in your guitar and you stick a mic in front of it. That's kind of what the mics hear most, is the low end. So to get rid of that, you have to dial it out with EQ or use a mic that in a position that doesn't hear all that low end.
Do you think they dropped the lav in the hole for this?
Well, that's quite possible, because what Chris is talking about is when they were recording in at A&M, when they had drums and bass and things all going down live, you couldn't really use a standard microphone, you know, a Neumann or something in front of the guitar, because it picked up too much drums and everything else. So what they would do would take a lavalier mic, like people, you know, put on their lapel to be interviewed, and they hooked it onto the sound hole. So it was really, really close to the strings, so right up against the treble strings, and then just dialed all the low end out so there wouldn't be all the rumble from the sound hole. That's very possibly how they got that sound, and it also would make sense because she may have cut the guitar live with the bass and drums in the room. Now, bass is often direct, but Jocko used to like to have his acoustic amp and mic the amp, so that would have been a lot of noise in the room. And to get a decent mix on the guitar would have been very hard if they hadn't done the lavalier thing. It's not a very pretty sound, but it gets you some sort of isolation.
All right. Anyone else have any thoughts on Cotton Avenue? Has anyone been there before?
I have not been there, but it is one of my favorites on the album. And listening to Overture and then going into that one, it's just very infectious to me. And what I said earlier about the entire scope of the album, that it's so rhythmic. I really am in love with the rhythm and the cadence of this song. And I know what you said about the chorus and everything. It is sort of a little hokey, but at first listen maybe, but I really do love it a lot. And then going into the next tune, I mean those two and obviously Off Night Backstreet is always been one of my favorites to listen to. But yeah, I really like this tune a lot.
I get a big band flavor out of this song. I really do. I get Duke Ellington. I can hear a bit of that sort of reference to some of where she goes to in ultimately when she writes Goodbye Pork Pie Hat. I mean, that there's a flavor that is, she's left Furry beyond now, and she's immersing herself in some of that culture.
Yeah, I hear some of that big band flavor in there too. And as far as the chorus goes, I always liked it. Little play on words there. If you've got no
If you got a place like this
to go, you just have to go there. If you got no place special, well, then you just go no place special. Well, where are you going? No place special. I always like that. And then the frogs and dogs and night birds and start up singing sweet country lullabies. And she has some really nice turns of phrase in there. And it's all just, it's joyous and it's fun.
Didn't the band do it at Ozfest?
Cotton Avenue? No.
Oh my God, that was.
Yeah, it was Cotton Avenue. It was
Yeah,
done that small art space.
Yeah.
Oh, at the Ogden?
Yeah, it
Not
was
at the Civic.
amazing.
Who did? Oh, it was the band from Boston.
Yeah, they were amazing. That was
Yeah, not at the Civic. Yeah, but at the Ogden. Damn. Yeah, I forgot about that. That was
Good memory.
Henry Douglas. Yep.
Yeah, they blew the roof off.
Yeah.
It needs to be said too that starting the album with with that the sound design of overture and then right into a jazz feel was also striking, because up to this point, Blue Motel Room and Twisted were her dabbles in jazz, and this was a full-on swing feel, and at the end of Cotton Avenue, there's what sounds like a horn section. I think it might be Jocko imitating a horn section, but yeah, it's definitely got that Ellington big band vibe and very uptown kind of sound. So she's declaring her new territory very strongly from the outset on this record. You couldn't say, well, this is a folk singer from the 60s anymore.
And she also did the song on the Wild Things Run Fast, right? The Refuge of the Roads tour or whatever.
Yeah,
it's called.
83 tour. She did it on every show.
83. All right, Ruben, was your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I wish I had heard these albums in the order in which they were released, because I probably heard this one after I heard Chalkmark. So although it was really different, it wasn't such a huge departure for me as it would have been having followed her from the beginning up to Hedgerow. And I don't know, it just she comes in after the overture, and she comes in with this sort of casual tone in her voice. I just think it's a great song, and I particularly like the overdubbed vocals in the choruses. I think she really did a great job with those. I love how loud they are. Some of her overdubs are quieter, and there was something else I was going to say here. Oh, this is one of the songs I like this record, because a lot of the songs, when they end, there's not a full stop and they don't fade out. They just sort of melt away into this ether, and then the next one starts. And this is the first one on the record that does that. And there are these weird sort of melting away sounds before the next track starts. Like, I don't know, it's just such a cool album. I love this record.
It really was a pleasure to listen to it a couple days ago. From beginning to end, it definitely is a journey.
Yeah, and it's actually pretty short for a double album. It's only 52 minutes long.
Right.
You could almost fit the whole thing on one side of a 90-minute cassette.
The label begged her and pleaded her to drop 10th World so that it would be a single album. Partly it's economical. I mean, it's very expensive to make a double album, and the money you can charge for it isn't twice as much. So, but she was steadfast in wanting to keep that. But yeah, it could have fit on a single album anyway. I mean, Todd Rundgren's Initiation is
60 minutes long.
So yeah, 68, I think. And so the, what do you say? It's 52. Yeah,
Right.
That's not excessive at all. That wouldn't even have compromised the volume.
She got some criticism about that too, as I recall. Maybe Rolling Stone said something about the amount of material could have fit onto one LP instead of two.
Can anyone imagine Paprika Plains not taking a whole side of an album though?
I maintain that there is another order for this record, that it was completely destined where we have it now because of the limitations of the vinyl and cassette formats that were prevalent at the time. I think that given it all over again, where it was a straight through either the CD, MP3, MP4, whatever, I personally think Paprika Plains would have closed the record, but I might be wrong.
Would you still have opened with Cotton Avenue?
I would.
You would.
Yeah, I think Cotton Avenue is your opener. I mean, your opener just because of the lines. If there's a place you want to go, which is this place is my record. You just got to go there. And if you don't want to come to this place special, well, then go somewhere else. But yeah, I think it's a great opener, and it's so propulsive. That bass work in there is just makes your body propel itself around.
And something I didn't say is, like I said, this wasn't one of my favorite albums, but then it was one of the ones I revisited more than some other ones, after time. Dave.
Wasn't there something funny with the back in the days of turntables, where you could stack two LPs and then it would drop the first one and play that, and then it would drop the second one. If I remember correctly, this album, it went side one and then the other album had side two on it, and then you turned them both over and then you got 3 and 4. So on the first disc you had like 1 and 4 and the other one had 2 and 3 or something like that.
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Did I make that up, or is that true?
Usually it is supposed to be so that you could drop 1 and 2 and then just simply flip the whole stack over and get 3 and 4. So
a lot of albums did that.
So 2 and 3 should be back to back, and 1 and 4 should be back to back.
So that begs the question, where does Paprika Plains fall? Is it side 3 or is it
side 2?
Side 2.
I mean, once that limitation of that technology went away, that kind of makes no sense to have the track order be messed up by that consideration.
Completely agree.
And that summer storm brewing in the southern sky while she's in the bar, it appears again at the beginning of Paprika Plains. I mean, it fell from midnight skies, it drummed on the galvanized, women tracked the rain up to the wake-up mirror. So to me, that's almost a continuation of a story begun on Cotton Avenue. I don't know.
I like to believe that was a night at Nucleus Nuance. I don't know if it was, but I can see her standing outside on Melrose Avenue watching that rain. I just get that feeling.
There are a lot of bars in this album.
Yeah.
Every time I hear Cotton Avenue, I think of that line, the see the patch of city lights, and seeing like a car going down the road and going toward this, this patch of city, and every time I hear the overture, I see that almost like she painted it, when I'm listening to the album.
Was it a poor area of Macon, Georgia?
I did look at the Wikipedia page. And it was mostly black-owned businesses.
Because she has the line, "Poor boys will be hanging around outside in the street. Mm-hmm. They all got the latest words. They're dancing to the latest beat while they're hustling and sizing you down on Cotton Avenue."
And I did find some articles about gentrification and stuff. So I'm guessing in the 70s that it was probably a poor area. I'm just going to have to drive up there. See you guys later. I'm going to leave now.
Where are you?
Tampa. And whenever I drive to Atlanta, I always go through Macon. All right. Any other thoughts on Cotton Avenue?
Thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, I guess we got to go there. We have a someplace special.
I just want to know how we know it's Macon. How do we know it's Cotton Avenue in Macon?
Yeah, I'd like to know that too.
Me too.
The only significant Cotton Avenue that's around, unless she made up the term, it might be even left over from her road trip from Hejera when she was in Savannah and driving across country. She could have hit Macon. It would be on that trail and kept it in the back of her mind. She might have had some residual thoughts and visions and concepts about Macon, Georgia, and things she saw on Cotton Avenue on her way to see Furry in Memphis. I mean, you could draw a straight line from Savannah to Memphis, and you're going to hit Macon. So it could be a carryover from that. But yeah, if you can Google Cotton Avenue, and it's Macon, Georgia, Macon, Georgia, Macon, Georgia, Macon, Georgia, Macon, Georgia. So.
Yeah, I just did it. Could be Scarborough, Ontario. So I want to get back to racism here and racist tropes, and I think it might be just a generic sort of reference to cotton and where the black people hang, and again, I'm not dissing that actually, but I think rather than a specific geographic reference, it's more a specific cultural reference to black culture. But
well, it always brought to mind to me the Cotton Club in Harlem. I don't know if she had that in mind or not. I always figured she just made the name up. Don't know.
Nah, it's in Macon. I'm gonna drive there. I want to see it. All right. Do we have any other thoughts on this track before we move on? All right. So I believe Dave and Robin are gonna be performing track 2, aren't you? All right, everyone, go get your tequila anaconda.
What? That's what I'm drinking tonight, baby.
Les said he's leaving us midway through because he has a parking lot to take care of. I'm gonna spotlight y'all.
I just want to say that Dave and Robin were in Colorado Springs not too long ago, and I broke out the tequila I'd bought in Mexico, and I think Dave and Robin drank it all, so I don't have any left.
It must have been
shame.
Well, that's because Les kept filling up our glass, our shot glass, and the shot glass was actually a measuring cup.
Did he have sangrita to chase?
What's the difference? What's the difference?
Between what?
A shot glass and a measuring cup, they're all the same, right?
Well, but the measuring cup was a cup. It was 8 ounces.
Isn't that a shot?
It is when you visit Les.
That's what Paz taught me.
Les, we're all on our way over. Going through detour through Macon.
It sure was delicious.
I like the logic of your mixology.
All right, here we go.
There was a moon and a street lamp. I didn't know I drank such a lot till I pissed a tequila anaconda the full length of the parking lot. Oh, I talked too loose. Again, I talked too open and free. Mystery, come on, talk to me. Please talk to me. Talk to me, Mr. Mystery. Whoa, whoa, yeah, yeah. We could talk about Martha. We could talk about landscapes. I'm not above gossip, but I sit on a secret when honor is at stake. Oh, we could talk about power, about Jesus and Hitler and Howard Hughes, or Charlie Chaplin's movies, or Bergman's Nordic blues. Come on and talk to me. just talk to me, Mr. Mystery. Yeah. Ooh. Hey. You could talk about ooh. You could talk like a sage. Anyway, the best of my mind all goes down on the strings and the page. That mind picks up all these pictures. It still gets my feet up to dance, even though it's covered with keloids from the slings and arrows of outrageous romance. I stole that from Willie the Shake. You know, neither a bar or a lender be. Romeo, Romeo, talk to me, yeah. Ooh, hey, yeah. Is your silence that golden? Are you comfortable in it? Is the key to your freedom or the bars on your prison? Are you gagged by your ribbons? Are you really exclusive or just miserly? You spend every sentence as if it were marked currency. Come on, talk to me. Spend some on me. Shut me up. I'm always talking. Chicken squawking. Bawk, bawk, bawk. Ooh. Shut me up and talk to me. Talk to me.
Woohoo! Whoa!
That sounded great.
That was wonderful.
Great arrangement, Dave.
Well, that was the highlight of my week.
Yeah, wonderful.
Dang, it was great.
Oh,
That's a great job, Robin. You made that sound. You made that sound really easy, and it's not. I sang that song at Joni Fest with Marion Russell, who today was her birthday. So, Marion, if you watch this, happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday, Miriam.
She's a total perfectionist. So this song we had to rehearse. This was up at Full Moon. We had to rehearse this like 12 times because it was really, really difficult to sing this song. You made it seem easy, but you know, for me it was not. Especially I saw from Willie the Shake, neither a bar or a lender B. You work all these syllables in there, and the guitars, you know, is rhythmic. But we got it. We really did it good. And we did Free Man in Pairs. We did Refuge of the Roads, and those were easy compared to this one. But this was a really challenging song, and I love this song. It's a brilliant song.
It really has kind of a cocaine filled attitude towards it, you know.
Yeah.
Well, and the funny thing is, the first time I heard this song, you know, I don't drink liquor, so I don't know liquor drinks, but I knew that the Tequila Sunrise, so I thought there was a drink called a Tequila Anaconda. It wasn't until later that I realized she had a tequila drink, and when the parking lot, it made an anaconda in the parking lot, like a snake, the piss trail. So I thought the Tequila Anaconda was the actual drink she was drinking.
I didn't do it until this very moment. Until this moment, Rob.
I thought the same thing.
Same here.
Yeah.
No, I got the Tequila Anaconda right off the bat because I have pissed in the parking lot.
Was it the anaconda from Hissing of Summer Lawns? Was that really Joni in the parking?
Oh, when I first heard this song, by the end of it, I was like, shut up! I really did not like it at first, so I loved it in a way, because I thought, well, it's very effective, because I wish you would just shut up. Now I love it. I really do.
Well, somebody mentioned cocaine, and I think the timing is right on that, because a lot of people say this is written for and about Dylan, and she had just come off her big cocaine period on the Rolling Thunder review, and she had spent a lot of time with Dylan. So, and the timing of this song, I think, is right on that. So, but
yeah, that's Point well made, Les. You're exactly right. And this is one of many ties from the Rolling Thunder Review that is a part of this album.
And
You know, Dylan, historically, Dylan had no conversation with her during that tour. And she wanted to talk to him. She wanted to talk to him, and she couldn't. So this song was born of that frustration.
And I think she performed it on her 76 tour too.
Correct.
Just looking back at some of.
So the first time I met Joni, I was introduced by a local friend here, Lucy Burdett, who we went to a concert called Artists Against Hunger and Homelessness, and Joni was playing, and she played with Jimmy Buffett's band. So, but before the show, she was holding court at a big 10-top table, and she was sitting there with Gloria, who I think was one of her, handlers at the time, and my friend Lucy and a couple of other people. And we were introduced and we got to talking, and I just, I was sort of gushing about how much her lyrics had meant to me over the years. And, friends of mine, both women and men who identified with these lyrics. But I said, I want to ask you a question. I said, are some of your songs autobiographical? And she goes, well, like what? And I said, well, I said, there's that song where you say there was a moon in a street lamp. I didn't know I drank such a lot until I pissed a tequila anaconda. Well, of course, she laughed very robustly and said, well, just like I was a close friend of hers, she said, well, you must know that place Dantana's in LA. And I said, as a matter of fact, my friend Kaki took me there, and I think we sat at your table where you like to sit. And so, yes, I have been there. She goes, well, I was there one night drinking tequila with some of my friends, and when I got ready to go, my car was parked all the way at the top of the parking lot. And she goes, if you remember the back parking lot there, it was quite a hike up the hill. So by the time I got there, I really had to pee. So she said I squatted right there in the parking lot and peed. And of course, everybody at the table is now in hysterics and stuff. It was quite a moment. I really enjoyed that a lot, and I love this track so much. Jocko's amazing on it.
Yeah, the first time I heard the track, it's a different Joni than I've heard before. I mean, she's just so loose. Could be the cocaine or the tequila, but I loved it. She's talking like a chicken. Talk about Willie the Shake.
Yeah, we hadn't mentioned it much, but maybe Ruben alluded to it. That her vocals on this entire album are so confident and so strong. I mean, for me, her vocals peak on Mingus, and we'll get there. But I listened to this record about maybe 10 times in the last month preparing for this discussion. And the one thing that kept coming back to me is her voice was so great. The range that she hit the high notes in here, and so clear, the clarity and the range of her voice, it's just incredible.
All the background vocals she did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this the first up-tempo tune she's done? I mean, literally, Raised on Robbery doesn't even come close. This is an actual up-tempo tune, and I think it's the first one.
Conversation's pretty up-tempo, no?
Yeah, I guess you're right. That has
like tonight.
Because it has a halftime feel, but this is more driving. But
Chelsea Morning, maybe?
Yeah, Jocko really he carries this tune for me. I mean,
right.
I think it's kind of a frivolous tune, but Jocko kind of makes it into a cool tune. Interesting that she didn't have percussion or drums on it when it's kind of an obvious tune to put drums on. And then she did have drums on tunes where you could have left them out. But also, I think the other point I was going to make is through Hijra, we've mostly been hearing deep thoughts, philosophical musings and which we all adore. And this is just the other Joni. This is the pool playing, drinking partier Joni that she also was all along. And so, yeah, that's why it feels fresh, because she hasn't really shown us that side of her much before.
Yeah, she's saying, she's pleading, hey, I'm relevant, you're relevant, let's talk, we can be relevant together,
It's the first song which really her humor is just every line is, you know, just spitting humor. It's great.
Jesus and Hitler and Howard Hughes.
And Ruben, it ends the way you described before, where it just kind of like fades away and just kind of melts away.
Yep.
Well, yeah, and Dave, the thing is, before the Jesus line, she says we can talk about power, and then she lists Jesus, Hitler, Howard Hughes, 3 different forms of power after that line. You know, they're all powerful in different ways. And so the lyrics here are not really throwaway, you know, or frivolous. You know, they're really quite brilliant. Now, Martha, there's been some discussion as to who Martha was. Martha Graham, maybe. She's talking about all sorts of different art forms. So it could have been, you know, the dance thing, but not sure.
And he was into painting at the time, wasn't he? I believe this was a discussion on the Queen Mary of all places, and he asked her about painting and
Adding whites, yes, yeah. Mixing colors.
And she was like, this guy's gotten into painting now. So we could talk about landscapes as specific to painting, I believe.
And he asked her what she would paint of this scene, and she talked about the disco ball and the dancers on the dance floor and everything. She asked him what he'd paint. He'd say, I'd paint this cup.
Cup of coffee, yeah.
Yeah. And then he recorded another cup of coffee. And a couple of years later.
She recorded Paprika Plains.
I liked the line, I'm not above gossip, but I'll sit on a secret when honor is at stake. That's a cool line.
I can relate to that one.
Yep.
Maybe more than anything else in Joni's whole catalog. All right. Anyone else want to jump in about Talk to Me?
Oh, one more thing on Martha. I thought about this recently, that in the Time era, Martha Mitchell, who I think was married to
John Mitchell,
the
Watergate
right.
incident.
That was in the news a lot.
And she was considered a big mouth.
Yeah, that always popped up whenever I heard the song too, Chris. I always thought, oh, Martha Mitchell.
Martha.
Possibility. She'd talk to you.
I always thought it was Martha from Virginia Woolf, from Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I don't know why. It's the only Martha I knew.
Well, she certainly drank a lot. Martha in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
All right. Any parting thoughts on Talk to Me, Bob? Who covered it?
Well, you know, Don Boswell's daughter hasn't generated quite as many covers as Blue has.
Really?
Talk to Me has been done 3 times. The first time was in 2006, fairly recently. Ian Shaw, who's a huge Joni fan, has had lots of Joni covers to his credit. This was on his Joni tribute CD called Drawn to All Things, in which he had the debut covers of Talk to Me and the song from Taming of the Tiger, which is kind of a reunion song with Kaloran, as well as Love or Money. So he put 3 songs on that CD that had never been done before.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's 3 times, but you know, that was the first one. I don't think any of them did justice to what Joni did.
Well, speaking of Love or Money, that was one of the new tracks that was on Miles of Isles, which leads us to our next song, which was originally on Miles of Isles as a new track, but then recorded in a proper studio version on Don Juan's Reckless Daughter. And Les.
Are we talking about Love or Money?
We can, sure.
Oh, is that what was next?
I was just segueing into Jericho.
Got
yeah.
Well, that one too, you know, both Jericho and Love or Money were on Miles of Isles, right?
Yeah.
There were studio tracks.
They were both studio recordings because Joni didn't like any of the live recordings. So after the tour was over, they recorded those in the studio and added applause to them.
I didn't know that. I have to go back.
Now you know.
That's because I listened to them both like once in the Miles of Isles version. Jericho didn't really catch me until I got to the Don Juan's version. There's just something about this one that does it for me. Is there anybody here that likes the Miles of Isles version better?
I think it's a lot better than For Love or Money. I find it one of the more listenable tracks from that entire live album, even though it's not live. I don't mind it, to be honest. I think it was improved markedly, but I don't think it was a bad cover of it.
Something that always bothered me about this song is I feel like it should be, I try to keep myself opened up to you. Like I try to keep myself open up. Just, I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't notice it much on Miles of Isles, but on Don Juan's Reckless Daughter, it really shines. You know,
Yeah.
to me, it's one of the most genuine, true love songs ever written in terms of what love is really all about. You know, not the glitzy, our love will see us through all things, but the way love really works and the way you have to work at it to keep it successful.
Speaking of, don't we have a live performance of this coming from Soup? Let me get the spotlight going. Last time I forgot to spotlight you, Soup, when it was your turn. So are you doing the Don Juan's or the Miles of Isles version?
I think you'll have to wait a minute. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I think you'll have to decide that.
Oh.
Because I'm playing it the way she plays it, so. So let me just. Yeah, this is one of my favorite songs too, for what Bob was saying. I mean, it's like a mature love song. How's that sound?
Sounds nice.
Okay. Make sure I'm in tune. Sounds all right.
I'll try to keep myself open up to you. That was a promise that I made to love. When it was new, just like Jericho, I said, but these walls come tumbling down. I said it like I finally found the way to keep the good feelings alive. I said it like it was something to strive for. I try to keep myself open up to you and approve your self-expression. I need that too, I need your confidence, baby, and the gift of your extra time. In turn, I'll give you mine, sweet darling. It's a rich exchange, it seems to me. It's a warm arrangement. Anyone will tell you just how hard it is to make it, keep a friend. Maybe they'll short sell you, or maybe it's you, Judas in the end, when you just can no longer pretend that you're getting what you need, or you're giving out anything for them to grow and feed on. I'll try to keep myself open up to you. It gets easier and easier to do, just like Jericho. These walls come tumbling down now. Let them fall right on the ground. Let all these dogs go running free. The wild and the gentle dogs kenneled in me.
Oh, beauty.
So good.
Fantastic.
Ooh.
Everyone is at the top of their game tonight.
So good. Ah. Bridge song.
That's another one that's not easy to sing. That melody takes some weird twists and turns.
Mhm. Yeah, it's pretty beautiful though.
It is. You sang it beautifully.
Yeah, that song's perfect for your voice, Sue.
Yeah, I really love to play that song.
Can you do it again? No, I'm just kidding.
Wonderful.
and then I need Dave and Robin to do Talk to Me again. All right, so what do y'all think of Jericho?
I just want to say that okay, this song was based on a movie. Did you ever see the movie gosh, it's with Claudette Colbert and Clark Gable. And
It Happened One Night.
It Happened One Night, right. So there's this one scene where they're in a hotel together and, you know, obviously they're attracted to each other, but she puts this blanket in the middle of the beds. And he called it, at the end when they actually get together, he says, Jericho's walls are coming down. And he takes down the blanket, you know. And that was a pretty sexy movie for those days. But it's totally taken from that movie.
That's awesome.
I've always thought of that movie when I heard the song. I never knew it was actually connected.
Yeah,
That's great.
I never thought of
She
that.
loved those old movies.
That's so crazy because what I was going to say was just like piggybacking off of what Bob said, is that it's a very mature kind of love song because it's the idea of letting yourself be vulnerable. I always took it that way. Totally not from It Happened One Night, which now I'm like, you know, but it to me, I thought, you know, of course it's Joni, so she's got some crazy metaphor, you know, and so I was like, oh, it's like about letting your vulnerabilities, like letting the wall down, you know, and I thought, wow, that is really when you are in a mature relationship is when you really are able to be you, you know, and now I'm like, oh, and now it was a literal blanket.
And also the realization that, you know, the problem in the relationship might be you. You know, you could be Judas, you know?
Yeah.
So there's a couple of biblical references in this thing. Of course, Jericho, obviously, the Judas reference, which, you know, she throws the Bible in lots and lots of her songs. That'd be a whole separate phonogenics discussion. But yeah, I absolutely love this song.
Katie Lang covered it on.
And I thought initially it was a strange choice for her to include it. And then I heard the version. I was like, you know what? This really is a damn fine song. And, you know.
I haven't listened to the Miles of Isles version in a long time, but I remember this being way better.
Yep, you remember right.
I'm gonna have to go back and listen to that Miles of Isles. I mean, it might even be decades since I've listened to it because I just never listened to that CD.
Is this the first time that Joni recorded a song twice? I mean, obviously she did Woodstock and many times later, but I think this may be the first time. I guess actually Miles of Isles, she was doing tunes that she'd recorded previously, but so strike that. But
Well, that's the reason why I say this album is like a collage to me, because she's picking up a lot of things like from Miles of Isles from a few years ago and kind of putting them together. And I think she said at some point that this was the last record on her contract or something, and she was just going to do whatever the hell she wanted with it. And it was just going to be off the wall and kind of weird. But
mission accomplished.
Yeah.
I thought that was why it was a double album. That one of the reasons it's a double album was some sort of contractual thing that she owed them so many discs. I don't know if that's true or not. Marketing.
Talking about Jaco for a minute. When we were talking about Hejira, we were kind of musing about Hejira. We were musing about the bass sound and the chorusing of the bass and stuff being probably created from double tracking. But on this album, the Roland CE1 pedal was out, And so this tune, when he's doing those, plucking those harmonics, and you hear that swimmy, rich chorus, that was the very first foot pedal chorus unit that came out in '76, and everybody jumped on it. Fender Rhodes players, guitar players, bass players, because it was this really wide stereo, and it just had this super modern sound. And so yeah, that was you can really hear Jocko using it to death on this tune.
I remember there was a discussion about this on the email list, and somebody brought up the fact that she was saying, "I'll try to do this," and they thought that was very sad or negative about her, that she couldn't just do this, that I'll try to keep myself open up to you.
To me, that's the beauty of the song. I mean, it's because it's realistic, right? It's
yeah,
like, our love will last forever, blah, 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 all those high notes. No, I'll try to keep myself open. I'm going to try. I'm going to make an effort here, right? I'm being honest with you. It's so honest. It's an honest, brutally honest love song. Maybe the most ever.
I agree.
Yeah. And it's another song like we roll right past this tragedy, which I use all the time in common discussion. This song, "The Gift of Your Extra Time," I use that line all the time with friends when they, if I hang out with them. Thanks for the gift of your extra time. I appreciate that. It is a gift. If somebody gives you their time to spend with you, that's a gift. And Joni puts it right out there: the gift of your extra time.
And it's a
turn. I'll give you mine.
John Guerin love song.
Could be.
It's miles away. If we're doing that game, I don't know.
David,
I like that she is trying to let her wild dogs out. That's one of the promises. You can have my wild dogs rip your throat out. In our love.
Actually, that note where you sing kenneled is just so intense to me. Because she holds it and the chord underneath it kind of resonates with the note that you're singing so incredibly. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes that just I mean, it moves me, I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, and I think the wild and gentle dogs kenneled in me, it represents those two parts of you that you don't want to cut loose of until you really feel like you're in a relationship where, okay, I can let these wild dogs go running free. I'll take the chance.
Yep. Deep trust.
Yep.
And not a chance in hell I'd ever do that in real life. Okay. Not a fucking chance in hell. All right. Chris and Paz, I think your hands were up.
Bob, you said this well. You said, it's a mature love song. She, later on in her career, she sort of went into that, sort of contextual thing where she had to say, all right, I'm middle-aged now. I'm writing middle-aged love songs. I don't know that she was any more eloquent when she turned her attention to sort of describing her writing period, looking at that, than she was in this song. This really was a brave piece of context that she delivered. So it's kind of like I maybe in reference, I was kind of disappointed when she said kind of where she was headed with that later writing, because it never kind of went farther than this particular song did for me anyway.
No, I think Stay in Touch did.
I love that song so much.
But that's later on. That was even way later.
The Tiger.
Yeah.
Wasn't it around Night Ride Home when she was talking about the Middle Ages love song?
Exactly.
Nothing can be done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Men from the Cold.
Yeah.
Love Puts on a New Face.
Yes, I was going to mention that one too.
Yeah, that
well,
was a great
in
one.
Chinese Cafe, she says, Carol, we're middle class, we're middle aged.
We were wild in the old days, baby.
We're still wild now, Paz.
Well, I wasn't going to let that cat out of the bag.
I always think of this too. I really like this record, and I really like Wild Things Run Fast, and really they're sort of side by side in the chronology, because Mingus, it was a different kind of project, and a lot of those, a lot of the lyrics, she started out with some of Mingus's stuff from the book, and this to me was Wild Things was the first proper album in a way after Don Juan's, to me. And then there was, Shadows and Light in the middle of it, and it would be interesting to see what she would have done following Wild Things in this vein, because the two are similar to me in a way.
I agree with that.
If Dog Eat Dog hadn't happened, which I also like, but that was kind of a weird left turn.
All right. Any other thoughts on Jericho before we go over to Bob to see who's covered it?
The chords are really pretty.
Yeah.
It's a really nice tuning. It's the Harry's House Edith tuning, and it's just beautiful changes. I wouldn't be surprised if Jocko said, let's record this again, because I can do a lot with this. Because by this point he was more than involved in steering where this album went. So I bet he had a say and he liked these changes, and I want to do this one.
I think you're right. It was a true partnership going on here on this record. You just hear it.
Well, she really admired Jocko's artistry, obviously, not just his bass playing, but his arranging skills and the people that he was able to bring him in. All of the percussionists on this album were all brought in by Jocko and Wayne, and this was the beginning of the partnership with all those Weather Report people on there. And I counted them up today. Four of the percussionists, or all four of the percussionists on this album, had all been in Weather Report. Two of them were currently in Weather Report, and two of them had been, Don Elias and Ayrto had previously been in Weather Report. So Jocko must have invited her to come see the band a few times, and I bet she was blown away. I was, the twice I saw them. And she must have just become a big Weather Report fan, said, all right, let's bring them all in, have them on the album.
The bass harmonics are just, I have to say, fucking gorgeous.
Gorgeous, and very enhanced by the stereo chorus, which makes them ring and sing forever.
Is that the chorus amp that Jocko nicked off Joni?
Well, the Roland first came out with a they designed the Jazz Chorus 120 amp, which is what you see on when in the Shadows and Light tour behind her, that she's got her guitar plugged into, and they put the same chorus effect into a guitar pedal, which wasn't part of an amp. It was, you could just plug it in directly, and so I think that was what Jocko was doing. It was possible he played through the amp, and they stereo mic the amp, but that was a very big turning point, because think how many records in the 80s were
the amp does have stereo output, Dave, just so you know. That amp,
yeah, it could have been that, but it's exactly the same circuit in the CE1 pedal, and it was, those things fetch a fortune now. You can find an original CE1, they're like $800 or something.
That was the light blue one, right?
No, that was the CE2. That the original one was this heavy steel contraption, and it was like bulletproof.
Yeah, I don't remember that.
And it was noisy, and you couldn't adjust you could adjust the chorus depth, but you couldn't. There was no mix knob, so it was full on, and you had a choice of vibrato or chorus. And you can hear both on this song. But anyway, that became the signature sound of 80s records. And this is kind of the first time you started to hear it, from 77. And I love it personally. I use the plug-in version of it all the time.
All right. Any other final thoughts on Jericho? Bob, how many people covered it?
Well, 15 covers. This is one of the big boys on Don Juan. As Mark alluded, Katie Lang made Those Walls Come Tumbling Down in 2004 with her cover of it on songs from the 49th Parallel. She also did Case of You, and it was all Canadian songwriters on that record. So, you know, it's a big task to follow the Katie Lang cover. But 15 other folks have done it, 14 other folks have done it, including a Dutch language cover, which was interesting. By the Cadu's.
And did Joni ever do it live after? Well, I guess it wasn't even live on Miles of Isles, so never mind.
Jericho, yeah, she did. She did it at a benefit, songs for the Dolphins with Jocko.
Okay.
Songs for the Whales in Sacramento in '76. That was before this album got released. So I don't think she did it after this album got released.
So I wonder if she did it live with Jocko, and that's where he heard the song and loved it and pushed her to put it on the album.
Yeah, and on that live version, he has like these huge bass bombs on that recording.
She didn't do it in Painting with Words and Music?
Jericho, no.
Interestingly, she did it once on the '79 tour, the very first date of the '79 tour.
Oh, that's right, Oklahoma City. She did it in Oklahoma City, and she dropped it after that.
Oh, is there a recording of that?
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have to check that out. All right. Well, this is where you either flip over the record or don't. Depends what side was it on. But our friend Chris here has pre-recorded a 17-minute rendition of the song that we're about to discuss.
Yeah, so thank God you don't have to watch me. I sent you all a photograph if you want. It's in the chat. You can pull it up. It's one of those specialties that I happen to look out the window just at the right moment from the airplane and got that image. So
beautiful.
You took that? I didn't realize you took that. Wow.
Oh, yeah. Another one. So yeah, you want me to give you a little intro on this one?
Yeah, please.
Oh, okay. I've been dissecting this song for decades now. You know, the way I play it, I try to ape her tonation, her dynamic, her feeling, because I just want to, I just have a feeling that if I can play it like her, I'll get some understanding of where her headspace is as she's writing it. So I'm trying very hard to feel what she's feeling as she's playing it. Whether or not I actually get there, or if it means something completely different to me, hey, I'll never know. But it's been quite a journey. It takes a long time to do this kind of stuff. You'll see me, if you watch the video, you'll see me changing pages because there's 19 pages of music to navigate through, and you kind of have to learn where you can build in the time to actually make, move the page aside, lift one hand off to do it. So there's all of that stuff, and it's taken, no joke, it's taken 20 years for me to get to this point where I can, play it in one piece.
Two words, Chris: iPad Pro.
iPad Pro, yeah. That and what? How do you do it? How do you need a foot pad or something?
Bluetooth foot pedal just turns the pages.
All right, maybe if I find a job, I'll get one. First things first, yeah. But yeah, what can I tell you? This is what I've figured out. I've tried 6 ways to Sunday to figure out the poem that goes in the center of it. Whether or not I figured out that there's probably some kind of a rhyme scheme, but it's jazzy. Sometimes it works to meter, and sometimes it's internal, and sometimes it is just hinted to. So, if that's a rhyme scheme, there is one, but there may not be. Does it match up with the music? Some places, yes. Most places, no. Is it overwritten or underwritten? I personally think she included it only to provide some context to some of what you're going to hear, and maybe give you something to sort of bounce the ball against the wall with. But other than that, I don't think she really intended it to be spoken as along with the music, as much as often and as hard as I've tried to make it fit. If there's somebody out there who can figure it out and make it work, please go for it. I'm dying. I want to see more people. I want to see music teachers use this piece and help teach kids a little bit more about playing and expression and rhythm and percussion that the instrument is capable of, because I think there is something there. Rhythmically, it's I think very sophisticated. It has perhaps some of the harmonies that Dave might like, but it does grow tiresome to many people's ears with regard to the sort of the hammering nature of some of the chords. I mean, they're repeated, they're hammered, and it can be tiresome unless you can work some kind of a dynamic in it, which she's very good at doing. I'm maybe not as successful as she is, but then again, I don't have Henry Louis helping to hone that as well. I will say this: if you're going to try to learn it, be prepared for some heavy carpal tunnel business. I hope you have strong wrists. You're going to need them.
All right. Well, before we show this video, I'm going to. All right, friends, I'm about to say something I never thought I'd say in my life. I'm about to share my friend's live version of the entire Paprika Plains. So I'm going to put myself on mute. I'm still talking. Share my screen, and Chris, we are going to show your video. Hopefully. Okay.
That was amazing.
Yeah, really. Oh, like, wow.
And Chris said I had to play the video. Oh, we can unmute now.
Wow.
Oh.
Oh,
Nicely done, Chris.
thanks for being awake.
Oh, that was unbelievable. Unbelievable.
I feel like all three performers have just given us their best tonight. I'm just blown away.
No, but I pre-recorded. I cheated.
Listen, you're allowed to cheat with Paprika Plains.
You played it all the way through, though.
Chris,
I haven't seen that.
17 minutes long.
That was 17 minutes or something like that. It was, yeah.
Is that the first cover?
Yeah, Bob, has anyone covered Paprika Plains?
Well, you know, Chris is going to bust a neck vein when I bring up the piano project's release earlier this year. This piano project, whoever it is, some guy who computer programs or whatnot, but he put out a 27-track project of Joni Mitchell tunes. It was all solo piano, and Paprika Plains was one of the songs that he did.
Oh.
And it was pretty much what Chris just shared with us.
Chris, it brought me back to my living room.
Where?
Listening to it. My teenage living room when I used to hide in the living room where nobody would sit and listen to Joni Mitchell albums. And I was like the only person in my high school actually listened through the whole of Paprika.
Well, I was always, you know, I love classical music, so I love the idea that she had this full orchestra and everything. And you know, Dave had the opportunity to work and talk with Michael Gibbs and just, you know, find out a little bit of the backstory. I will say one thing though, because Dave, I want you to add many pearls of your wisdom on this with regard to what you learned from Michael. But what I will say about the end section, I can't really do much with the dance section at the end, only because, well, to be honest, Joni doesn't do all that much with it herself. What she does is she basically draws the box for Wayne and Jocko and John Guerin to just go crazy and just do this amazing exploration. And it all comes back. And you know how he talks to coming back to one? They get back to one, but they do it in a weird syncopation and it just spirals beautifully. And I couldn't ever try to duplicate anything close to what they pull off on that. It's a brilliant piece. I wish more people would attempt to cover it. I wish Joni herself would have brought it out of mothballs and sat down at the piano and prepared. Once she was touring with an orchestra, I mean, God, you know, I'd have killed to hear her perform that.
Chris, I have a recollection of you playing that. Did you do that at Rick and Brad's house in Beverly Hills? Weren't we all there?
I don't remember doing it.
We were there. You did it.
Yeah, in the video.
I'm sorry. It must have been awful.
You and Sherelle.
Speaking of awful, we tried to do it at Ruby Lake.
That wasn't awful either. That was amazing too.
No, but everybody was hungry.
Yeah. And I had no idea what I was doing, but hey.
No, and to be honest, like I say, I've been trying to retrofit that poem back into the music, and I saw.
We should keep working on that, Chris. I want to do that.
I saw Jamie's note said if you read it like Morgan Freeman, it works. It seems it's underwritten. I'm telling you, I think she just said, you know what, I'm going to give them this. They'll give them enough feeling for it, you know. But anyway, it's autobiographical. I love what we learn about where she grew up, how she grew up. Just even again, here we are with race again, because she talks about the native, you know, the indigenous people, you know, basically being, you know, sold the church and the bottle at the same time. I mean, it's a horrible story, and she tells it so well. I work a little bit of, pathos into that section. You know, I slow it down a little bit more, and I get very tender when she talks about, you know, when I hear the lyric in my head about they lost some link with nature. They cut off their braids and lost some link with nature, because not only was it in some ways a genocide, it was the loss of her own naivete to come to those and witness that conclusion as well. So, I mean, there's a lot that goes on in this that I think that is important for biographers of hers to keep in mind. And I think that this is a grand roadmap that she created, and I'm happy to live it as often as I do.
Dave.
You're muted, Dave.
Yeah, you're muted.
First of all, Chris, that was masterful.
Yeah.
The years that you spent on that totally show. So congratulations. I wanted to say that although it's probably not my favorite Joni tune, I think it's the most ambitious and the most important tune that she ever did. It's an absolute zenith of compositional accomplishment for an untrained musician to have pulled off. I mean, it's actually unthinkable that for an untrained musician to trust her own instincts enough to have even attempted it and then pulled it off. Now, according to Mike Gibbs, Daco had been kind of coaching her on trusting her own instinct and not pre-planning everything. And it showed her some techniques for how to improvise where you just kind of almost close your eyes and let your fingers, you know, go where they want. And I think the middle section of Paprika Plains was created with that. And I think there may be lots of attempts, which this was the best version of, because they cut this down from several hours of piano improvisations. But it's very significant that Jaco hipped her to techniques of not second guessing yourself, not editing yourself, not following any path that you've ever followed before, and whatever sound comes out of the piano, that's the composition. And then the brilliant thing was they then handed over to Mike Gibbs, who then made sense of it and was able to orchestrate this. So my first point is I think it's her most important work, even though it's not actually my favorite, but I just think it's genius. So I have more to say about it, but I want to hand it over to others.
Well, I first heard it where I went to university. The radio station played it. I think it was before the release of the record. And I'd gone to a good friend's apartment to listen to it. We were both big Joni Mitchell fans. And I think I was just speechless when it was over, because I didn't know what to expect. And I thought, wow, what is she going to do next? Is she going to go into more of a compositional type of mode, or what? Or is she going to go into prog rock, or, you know, where she's writing semi-classical pieces? Is this a piano concerto that she's written? I don't know. It just kind of blew my mind, and I didn't quite know what to think of it. But that whole story about, I think she'd been ill for most of 1977. She had abscessed ovaries, and she'd been in the hospital. And she said doctors wanted to take out some things that she thought she needed. And she had paints brought in and painted these delirium paintings. But she got up and went to the piano and just started to improvise. And I did run across something, Dave, about she was using those techniques that Jaco had taught to her. And then they recorded, I think, 4 different improvisations that were all about half an hour. and they cut it down and pieced it together into this one 10-minute piece. And then the rest of it was all kind of pieced together as well. I mean, the orchestra and the composition of the words at the beginning of the piano solo, and then the end, and then the coda, I believe, was recorded in London, which I love that ending. And I could just hear Wayne playing when you were playing it, Chris, which, wow, that just blew me away. You were so incredible. But yeah, it was something that was kind of difficult for me to wrap my head around, but I just thought, wow, this is great though. Good for her.
Where I've always had a problem with the story, only because it just kind of didn't jive with what my ears were hearing. She talks about the strings being out of tune. I listened to it and I always heard it. I knew something was out of tune, but I always blamed it on the piano, because I just figured that an entire orchestra wouldn't be out of tune together. That, I didn't think that could ever happen given an assemblage of classically trained musicians who all know how to tune their instruments. So unless there was a problem with the studio or the tape speed or something like that, that was knocking the whole orchestra out of whack, that's another issue. But that said, the out of tuned nature to it, and I don't know if Mingus shared this attraction to it as well. For me, because I knew that the piece was in many ways autobiographical, it supplied for me the necessary ingredient of any autobiography, and that is time. It was metaphysically able to translate the passage of time into something I could hear. And even, no, it wasn't 20 years of, a piano being detuned, but it was enough to sort of create it, give it its own little dreamscape. And I thought that was an incredibly ballsy choice. I thought that was completely her choice that she made, and I'd still love to believe that was the case, but sounds like it's not.
Now, this song was remixed, correct? Was it Songs of a Prairie Girl? I don't have the best ear for things. How is the remix different?
Pimp Your Ride mix, I call it.
It's not very different, but they digitally retuned the piano.
Okay, gotcha.
And they dropped a line, didn't they?
They dropped a line of lyric, and I think the bass sounds different. The bass sounds rounder, tubbier. I think that they took a little bit of the impact out of Garen's drums. I think in general, the whole bass is less tight than it was on the original.
Does anyone know what line
did they drop? Which line did they drop?
I'm gonna get some air. I'm going outside.
Really?
To get some air. Just one of the. Just one of them. The first. I think it's the first repeat.
Oh.
Yeah. So all we hear is the repeat.
Weird.
As opposed to the line. Yeah.
That's bizarre.
I think it was just a bad. They forgot to punch in on it, or they didn't have a track open when they were transferring over from the multi-track. They didn't know it was
Perhaps
there.
it was the cocaine haze.
So I could relay the story of my discussion with Mike Gibbs, if you like.
Yes, please.
So as you know, I'm always interested in the backroom guys that make things happen, like Steve Katz and so on, the people you kind of skip over in the credits. But Mike Gibbs is actually a very famous orchestrator and composer out of Berkeley in Boston. He's actually originally a South African, and he lives in Spain nowadays.
And after I had interviewed Max Bennett back in 2011, I got on a roll of wanting to see how many Joni alumni I could interview. And the next person that I contacted was Mike Gibbs. And I actually, Facebook, you just kind of search for somebody, Michael Gibbs, and there he was. And so I wrote him and I messaged him and I said, I'm conducting interviews with people that worked with Joni Mitchell for her website, and would you be interested in talking with me about your experience working with her? And he was just as Max was, he was super excited to respond and say, that was one of the high points of my career, to get to work with her, and I'd love to talk with you. So we exchanged emails with some questions that I prepared, and this is all available on jonimitchell.com if you look up a conversation with Mike Gibbs. But at the end of the conversation, I said, you wouldn't happen to have the scores still for Paprika Plains, would you? And he said, oh boy, I don't know, this is like 40 years ago, over 40 years ago. And he said, well, I'll have a look. And about an hour or two later, I get an email from him. He said, guess what? I found these mimeographed, remember the mimeograph, right? Mimeographed copies of sections of the score. So like a score, if you've ever seen a score pad, it's about, 20 by 14 or something. It's a huge piece of paper. And so to copy it, you had to kind of take snapshots of sections of it. You had to tile it. And he said, I have PDFs of mimeographed
handwritten
copies of the handwritten penciled score. I'll send you them. So he sent all these PDFs over to me. It was like page, 4A, B, C, D kind of thing. So you could kind of tile it together and zoom in really closely to see these tiny little pencil written notes. And I had been doing quite a few transcriptions with a guy in Sydney, Australia called Michael Dunn, who I've never met, but we've tackled Down to You and a bunch of ambitious transcriptions before. And I said, I got a whopper for you, Michael. You want to help me with this? Because I was starting to dig into it myself, and I'm thinking, man, this is going to take me a year of entering these notes. And so Michael's really fast, and so we divvied up the labor. And
I just found it on my computer. You sent it to me. It's 24 pages.
Yeah. So this ended up being a 3-month project of us both working in Sibelius, entering different sections, and I transcribed all the piano parts because those were not in Michael's score, and they were somewhat or largely in the charts that Chris played from, which I think was a published songbook. But anyway, I transcribed the piano myself and then input Michael's orchestral score, instrument for instrument. And then Michael Dunn in Australia did the same thing until we had the whole thing put together. And it's just a monumental effort. I mean, how many pages was it?
24. 24
pages of full orchestral score. And so I put the whole thing together and I sent it back to Michael Gibbs and I said, well, here's what we got. Can you proof it? And so Sibelius allows you to play back the score. I mean, it's cheesy because it's MIDI, right? But it's kind of like fake oboe and fake strings and everything. But he listened back through it and he said, yep, it's fantastic. So we went with it, and I put it up for all to use on jonimitchell.com. And subsequently, Michael has emailed me and he said, "Oh, can you send me that link again? Because I've got people in Berkeley that want to study this." And then I get an email from the Saskatchewan Symphony that said, "How much would it cost to access the score of Paprika Plains? We're thinking about doing a Joni Mitchell tribute in our, to honor our, hometown girl, and we'd love to perform Paprika Plains with our orchestra." And I said, "Hey, it's free, go for it." But the parts were not output. This was
available.
Yeah, this was the score, not the individual parts. But I wrote to Michael in Sydney and I said, "Hey, you want to output the individual parts?" And he said, "Sure." So I don't know if I think it never happened because of budgeting or scheduling or something. But so that effort has generated some interest in Saskatchewan. It's generated interest with orchestration students at Berkeley that want to study this work. This is a major piece of work by a North American composer that needs to be studied as such, not a folk singer or a songwriter. This is a composer at this point.
Debussy.
Yeah, there was areas of what you were playing, Chris, that I'm going, man, that is pure Debussy. And we know that one of Joni's big influences was Debussy. And so she was marshaling everything she had, everything, all the emotion, all the influences, all of her trust in her own artistry, which when you've not really had any piano lessons, how the hell do you dare do this? And she dared do this. She just went for it because she trusted her own artistry. And anybody else would say, well, I'm not qualified. I've got these fragments, but I am not qualified to call this a piece. But she trusted herself. And I think it's just an extraordinary accomplishment. You could pick it apart in little ways by saying, well, it's kind of not going anywhere right now, and this is not developing a theme or something. But damn, this is a self-taught musician composing this work, and it's extraordinary.
Recurring motifs, all sorts of things that musicologists and students of fine, composed music would be able to latch onto and tell her she did. She had no idea she was doing, I'm sure, but it felt right.
Well, so just to complete my narrative here, Mike, I asked Mike, well, was she happy, with the orchestration? Because it was Jocko that recommended Mike to be the orchestrator. Before Vince Mendoza, Mike was the cat. And he said, yeah, I think so. We went out to dinner for Chinese afterwards, and she was, after the session, and she was just really jazzed. And, none of the business about the piano intonation or anything had come up yet. But she was just so happy to have seen this piece realized. And he relayed to me that it was one of the greatest collaborations he'd ever had in his lifetime. He was an admirer of Joni Mitchell before, and then gets the call to work with her, and he gets to do his thing with one of her most ambitious piece, which still stands as very ambitious and kind of unique in her catalog. So I have to thank, if Mike's watching, I have to thank you for talking to me and letting me capture what you wrote for all to share. Future orchestras or future performers that want to do it for real. The score is available for free download from jonimitchell.com, and I was very thrilled to work on this. It took me a long time, and Mike Dunn, I'd like to meet Mike Dunn, actually. This guy he's fast. He goes on vacation. He says, I've been on vacation all week, but I got about 12 pages done. Wouldn't want to be his wife.
Thank you.
All right. Well,
Thank you, Dave.
I don't have too much to say. I'm just enjoying sitting here listening to everything everyone's saying. I will say that I've struggled to get through the poem. I mean, I've read it, but it doesn't do it for me.
Well, you know, it's loosely attached to the music. It's very loosely attached.
Yeah.
By the way, Henry Louis did call this her most fully realized work. He called this piece that fully realized.
And we gotta give a little shout out to that drum sound when the drums come in. Just amazing.
Well, and a big shout out to the Wayne Shorter solo, which of course in '77 he also did sax work on Steely Dan's Asia album, which was another really fine record from that year.
Well, she's singing just before, I guess, where the poem would fit in. She's singing, "I'm floating off into my dreams."
Right.
And this is her dream. I mean, she's expressing it, I guess, musically. I've never been able to fit that poetry to that music either. And I've never really tried all that hard, and this dream is kind of amazing, I think. I don't know.
It's beautiful. It's a beautiful piece of writing.
Yeah, it is. It really is.
It has its own peaks and troughs and dream within a dream, especially about the beach ball. When that comes in, it's like, you know, she's not only is she in a helicopter looking down, but then she's suddenly a 3-year-old again with a beach ball, having to go to the garage and have it repaired.
Then it's the earth, and it's Mother Earth she's falling against, but then she takes her sharpest fingernail and loses Paprika Plain.
But yeah, and I've read somewhere that it's meant to be, if you're writing free consciousness, which I do once in a while, just to remind myself I can, you know, because I'm fitting little pieces of this puzzle together, the end result must flow as if it was spoken for the first time, and that's on Wikipedia about the album. So it is. I mean, if you know Morgan Freeman did it, it would be amazing. Do you know what I mean? All I can sound like is kind of, I don't know, a frog at the moment.
Some parts of it does have a rhyming scheme, and that's what's hard, is that she wrote structure into some of it, but she wants you to basically ignore it. She wants it to be so naturally spoken that it's propelled by emotion and not by a meter.
No.
And even though she's included it, it's a tough nut.
And some of the rhyming, I don't think there's I mean, sometimes she goes with a scheme, sometimes she'll kind of go free form, which...
Well, that's the jazzy in her, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The jazz, the rubato, you know?
Yeah, and it just sort of reminds us that there is a chaos within discipline. Just as a piece of writing, I think it's...
And like a dream, sometimes it seems like it's making sense, and sometimes it's anything goes.
Exactly. But yeah.
Somebody was mentioning about the drum sound and the tom fill, and that's actually something that that Steve Katz talked to me about. Most of Joni's records had been done in Studio C at A&M, which was a tiny little studio. It was 27 by 18, and she would fit the whole band in there, and that's where Blue and Court and Spark and Hissing were recorded, in this tiny space. But when this album was made, they moved into the middle
size studio, Studio B, which had it was a large studio, but it had a partition down the middle. And they set up a drum riser right where where the partition meets, and they left a kind of an air space into the other half. So if you can visualize a large ballroom, perhaps, being with a center divider with the drums set up right in the middle, where the divider closes but not completely. That's how they set up the drums. And when Garin heard the playback of Paprika Plains, he was blown away. He said, "That's the best drum sound. You captured my drums better than anyone ever has done." And he was really stoked with that sound. And on a subsequent recording, he went into A&M he said, "Can you give me that sound again?" And so they set it up exactly the same way, same mics, same, partition, everything. Never happened. They were never able to remake that sound. That was one of those happy accidents that happens in recording where, you kind of try things and it works, and then you try it another day and it doesn't work, and you have no idea why. This is what's fun about making records. It's not a science.
Right.
You can read all the books you like about impedance and frequency response of microphones and all that, and it doesn't mean anything until you have it all come together and the music happens. So those of us like Michael, you understand this. Like when you make records, you can plan all you want, but it's really dumb luck when it comes out fantastic.
I remember the first time I heard this when those drums came in. Like, I definitely took notice.
Well, back then, the drummer, and this was Phil Collins' era, you didn't have bottom heads on the toms. They were called concert toms. So you had a top head but no bottom head, which allowed you to put a mic actually into each drum to mic it from underneath. And that's how the Phil Collins and Genesis drum sounds were done. And that was a really 70s thing to do. Nobody did it after the 70s. But that's how Garin did it. And so the toms have a very punchy attack of the top head, but none of the complexity of the resonance of the bottom head. And you can get the mic really in there, so you can get isolation of every tom from every other. And it's wonderful how it works out there. But even with all that, there's still a lot of happy accidents going on. And I just love that story of how they tried to recreate what they did on Paprika Plains, months later, and they never could.
Jamie.
Just a question, Dave.
Yeah.
Top head and bottom head are you talking about the skins?
Yeah, they're called heads, but yeah, maybe they're called skins in England. Yeah, most drums have a top head and a bottom head, or a top skin and a bottom skin. And the interaction of the pitches between those two skins gives you a very complex kind of resonance of the drum, right? You can, drum tuning is not an exact science. You're kind of going for tighter or looser rather than F sharp, So the interaction of the top head resonating against the bottom head is a very complex sound. But if you take the bottom head away, you get just the pitch of the top head and lots of attack and lots of shell, but none of the interaction of the bottom head. So actually it's a purer sound. And it was very favored at that time for drummers to do that, because you got this really featured sound. I read once that Supertramp, when they were recording, they flew all the way to New York just to record tom fills, because there was a studio that was famous for drum sound, probably Power Station. And so Ken Scott had the budget to do that. And one of the ways you could really get a very defined drum sound was take the bottom head off. It doesn't sound very good acoustically, but it sounds great with a mic inside the drum.
And just another recording question. It says additional recording in Basing Street Studios in London.
Yeah. So Steve Katz told me about that. He said Jocko was on tour with Weather Report during most of '77, and they wanted to get Jocko on the album. So Steve and Joni and Henry flew to London with the tapes, literally in their bag, going through the X-rays.
Oh, wow.
The whole thing could have been eliminated by the X-ray machine being miscalibrated. And they book a session at Basing Street so that they could bring Jocko in while he had a day off on tour. Jocko comes in and lays down all of his parts for Don Juan in one day on his day off from the tour. And then they have to fly back again through the X-ray machines carrying the master tape. There is no copy, till they get home. And this is how records were made. Everything was risky. The whole thing they could have dropped the tape. It could have been erased by the X-ray machine.
Anything could have happened. The speed of the machine in London could have been different from the speed of the machine in, all of these things back in those days were enough to upset a recording. And we have none of those problems now. Digital has eliminated all of that. It's created a few new ones, but all of those unreliability problems have gone away. So I marvel at the people that made good records. Like there's a great Rick Beato feature on the making of Bohemian Rhapsody that came out last week. And Brian May is talking about, the nightmare of edits. You couldn't really do edits. You just basically had to play it right.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Chris, just before I go, amazing playing. Thank you so much. I remember you played it because I was turning your pages in Denver. So yeah, that was that. And listening to it.
Yeah, how did I communicate that?
I was having to follow along with the song, except when it came to the poem part, it was like there's no song.
So true. So true.
Is it 4:15 there, Jamie?
It is 4:15.
Wow. Well, do we have any other thoughts on Paprika Plains? All right. Well, oh yeah, Chris.
No. I was just saying goodbye, Paprika.
Oh,
yeah.
Bye, Paprika.
Thanks, Jamie.
Bye, Jamie. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Night, Jamie.
Get some sleep.
All right, and let's also take a pause since we're at the end of record one. Well, the crew here, we've decided that we want to give record 2 of Don Juan's Reckless Daughter the proper justice it deserves. So part 2 will be coming at you next week. Thanks to my Patreon subscribers, thanks to my YouTube subscribers, and most importantly, thanks to my Joni Mitchell friends here. And most importantly, thanks to Joni Mitchell for writing some of the best music that's ever been created, ever. And we'll see you next week.